Yeah. So thank you so much for your time. And you are now in Thailand.
That's correct.
Why you in Thailand? Like you live there long term or you work
I've
remotely?
been traveling around Southeast Asia for almost 2 years now.
Oh, okay. So how
Yeah.
long have you lived in Thailand?
On and off. So this time it's already going to be 2 months. Before there, I was Vietnam. Before that, Thailand. So just hopping around.
Oh, cool. Okay,
Yeah.
we must come back to this later. For now, can you please tell me about your educational and professional background?
So I graduated a long time ago with a computer science degree from University of Pittsburgh.
Mm,
And I've always been really big about software engineering. So like even during my computer science days at the university, I started a computer club and we did all sorts of like creative things with computers. And so I chose that field out of passion.
mm,
It was something that I would do as a hobby. Like even when I was a kid, I liked to play with Legos. My father built me a Lego table, and I would just spend endless hours. Like time would just go by, and I wouldn't notice. And I would just build creative stuff. It would never be like the actual like thing that's on the package of Legos. I would
mm.
just come up with my own, creativity. And I think I see a little bit of that with Web3, but I'll
Oh,
get to that in a moment. So like computer science degree, and then I went into programming in my career, and I played different roles. I've worked in large companies, I've worked in small little startups, and then I would say that the transition from Web 2 to Web 3 was around the pandemic.
mm,
And I was in New York City, working in New York City as a software engineering instructor at a boot camp, and it was one of my favorite jobs. But the pandemic hit, and unfortunately, the company didn't have the resources to scale, and so I was looking for my next role, my next position, and I was thinking at the time, I want to start something new. Like, what's the new thing? Is it like app development, mobile app development? No, that's been around for a while. What's the new thing? And even then, I already like tinkered a little bit with Ethereum,
mm.
and I put together like an Ethereum mining rig just to test it out, just to learn and see if it even works. And I got it to work, and it was interesting how I created it, like a shoe rack, like that you
Mm.
put like. I took a shoe rack and then I put the graphics card there, the motherboard, and I started building like essentially like an open computer case, and I got it to mine and profit. But then I didn't scale that because I didn't feel comfortable because of the high demand for electricity. So like if I wanted to really scale that, that would be a lot of electricity usage. And I just thought that doesn't seem like a sustainable thing. And then I just kind of hit pause there. My curiosity, the technical curiosity, was kind of like crossed off, like checked off. So I got that. I got to understand a little bit more about Ethereum. And even at the time, like I was trying to wrap my head around smart contracts, what exactly it was, like what was the implication of it, like how could it change the world? Because I thought they were onto something. Like I remember watching the early DevCon videos
Mm,
where it was just a room of like uh, PhD folks discussing like building this Ethereum blockchain, and I said like these people are really smart,
mm,
and what they're building, it's something I can't quite put my finger around it. And I think that was around 2016 when I was like looking into that. So then pandemic came and I kind of revisited that thought, that idea. I was like, that might be something new. I think that might be something new and something disruptive. At the time, my hobby was also like finance and trading, and I was trying to get better at trading. And so this cryptocurrency, blockchain thing kind of combined both of my interests, like software engineering and finance. And so um, I did some research and I found Polkadot. So I found Polkadot through Dr. Gavin Wood. Like I was researching online and I started watching videos on his idea of Polkadot. And he was co-founder of Ethereum, creator of the Solidity programming language for smart contracts. And he had this idea for Polkadot at the time, which would essentially, it's like Ethereum was never meant to be more than just a prototype, but it was a prototype that took off like many like successful like products, and it had a lot of shortcomings, a lot of bottlenecks, one of them being scalability. And Gav had all these new ideas that he knew he couldn't implement on Ethereum because that would require updating the Ethereum blockchain, which that's cumbersome. And so then he came up with like, let's build a new blockchain. Let's call it Polkadot. And I started listening to his ideas and his vision around that, and it blew me away. And I was sold, and I was like, this is really cool. And I applied to the company that was responsible for building Polkadot, which is called Parity Technologies. But I didn't expect much because I didn't have a Web3 experience in my resume, my background. But one thing led to another, and I got hired. I got hired as a support engineer at Parity. And that was the greatest job in the world because I was essentially considered like the master troubleshooter for the ecosystem. So
Oh,
anything blockchain Polkadot related would come to me. It's like, hey, my blockchain isn't working, fix it, right? So I had to like go down the rabbit hole, go through the plumbing and everything and try to figure out like where it's broken. And so that allowed me to really, really get up to speed with Web3 and blockchain development at a very fast pace. And if I was extremely stuck, I could always reach out to the core engineer that actually built that piece of the protocol, which was very, very amazing experience to have. Um, and so I was around when Polkadot was being built out, when Substrate was also being built out. Substrate is a blockchain framework for building blockchains. And so some of the programming for building governance, actually all of the programming, I was deeply involved. And so from a governance perspective, I come from a technical background. I've helped teams implement technically like how to build governance, not on a smart contract level, on a blockchain level. And I've always chosen to try to remain distant from politics in terms of blockchain. But recently, I have applied for a program called Decentralized Voices, which they delegate like a lot of cryptocurrency towards like your account. And so you'd get all that voting power behind your account. So if I do get approved for that, that would be like my first stint at actually like putting my voice out there in a on-chain like political manner, which let's see how that goes.
oh, yeah. So currently you are still working for Parity Technology?
Oh, so Parity, after Parity, I co-founded a blockchain company called Rogue.
Oh,
Ro- Rogue is a blockchain engineering company, and we created a blockchain called Pop. Uh,
okay.
yeah, and this blockchain is a smart contract blockchain. We acquired a programming language called Ink. Ink is a smart contract programming language, and it's similar to like Solidity, but I'd say it has better ergonomics. You're essentially, when you write in Ink, you're essentially writing in the Rust programming language.
Mhm.
Uh, it's really nice to write in Ink. Um, and this blockchain, yeah, you can deploy Ink smart contracts to it. So yeah, so I co-founded that, and then after that, I created a study group called Polkadot Study Group. So that's like my latest thing, and my focus lately has been to study Web3 protocols. Right now, I'm like studying DAOs and designing DAOs, the trade-offs for DAOs. So yeah, been looking into that.
Wow. Okay. I get you take your drink. Such a, I can see like your joy of creating things and playing with things, and all of this kind of resemble what you played with the Lego before, until like now with smart contract. Like the moment you said that you put the mining rig on the shoe rack, like that reminds me of the Lego table. That was such an amazing journey. So how did you know Justin?
Just we worked together at Parity. We were on the same team, and
Oh,
yeah, we had a good time.
oh yeah. So as you have like a passion for computer science and study that formally, do you see what are the most advantages of people who study computer science when they step into blockchain?
I like to say that like there's this whole like Web 2 and Web 3. Really, we should just kind of blur that out and erase it,
Mm,
and just call it, I see it as a progression of software engineering.
mm,
So we're creating a world where it's possible for software to communicate with other software in a
mm.
trustless manner. So to me, that's just uh, there's nothing more beautiful than that from a software development perspective.
Okay, so is there any misconception of the currently division between Web 2 and Web 3 that you see popular out there?
That's one misconception. I would say that like that it's separate, that it's a division. I see it just as the evolution.
Mm,
Uh, the other, there are other things that I see, for example, that I see a big critique where it's like there isn't enough real world use case uh, for blockchain. Like what has blockchain brought in terms of real world use cases? There's got to be more. Like you think of like AI. AI
mm,
is a very practical one, technology that has vast number of real world use cases. And I think that that's a misconception because we're still in the early stages. Um, and blockchain, like I said the other day to some people, I said, maybe we're not building blockchain for developers. Maybe developers are building blockchain for AI.
oh,
So if that was the case, because AI needs a verifiable way of getting work done,
mm,
and blockchain can be the foundation for that. So I
yeah.
think, yeah, that's why I think that there's a misconception.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of knowledge that you gain in besides that software development? What knowledge from computer science that particularly needed to understand blockchain?
Fundamentals, the data structures. So like, I'm not one for like I was never part. I'm not saying anything wrong, but like against this, but like I was never one of like the meme culture, like you know, meme tokens and things like that.
Mm,
I got into it because I was fascinated by the technology. And
mm,
that's why it's like from the outside, people who are from like friends and family, they're like, I don't get blockchain. What is it? What is this thing? And a lot of them come, it's like they get their intake of like the blockchain world from like what's happening in mainstream with meme tokens and things like that, which at first I would really like, it would hurt me because they're like, no, you got to see the technology,
mm,
and the underlying technology, you look at it, it's like cryptography, right? That's, I believe that's computer science and mathematics. Data structures, uh, there's the a lot of data structures that go into building a blockchain. Um, so the fundamentals, it's all there, mathematics and computer science.
mm. Yeah. And with your amazing adventure so far since you get into computer science and then blockchain, what are the most challenging part of your work?
So most challenging part of my work is this creativity that I enjoy,
Oh,
and living on that, like kind of like you're surfing the wave. Like I like to catch the wave. To me, catching the
mm,
wave, like riding that creativity and um, having the like there's always, I feel like there's always a pool of like, let's take what this creativity and let's make it more practical. Let's make it more, and when we say practical, it's like let's apply it to a real world use case.
mm,
I like to remain more on like the research side. I like to remain more on the creativity side. And I do believe it is practical. Like, for example, one thing that I published recently was the idea of like creating a true autonomous DAO, right? DAO already has the word autonomous in it, but like a true autonomous DAO, and one that would be managed by AI, because then I can see like it would be very powerful. Um, but that's all like people may criticize me, oh, that's like very like visionary, that's very up there in the clouds. Like, you know, we need something a little bit more practical. So that has always been my challenge in my career, even in Web 2, to kind of remain rooted and remain grounded, and find that find a yeah, like a place for me to excel. Also going back to the how does computer science apply to blockchain?
Mm.
Like going back to even like trustless, like having software communicate trustlessly with the other piece of software, you're going to need data structure for that. You're going to need cryptography for that. There's also another element that's called game theory that's essential if you want to create like a good ecosystem, because you need incentives.
Mm.
So a lot of times it's that financial component of like, why should I sustain this protocol? Why should I run a computer to sustain this protocol? What's in it for me? And that's where like the game theory aspect comes in. And it's like, okay, we're going to create a cryptocurrency, because you don't always need a cryptocurrency for blockchain. But
Mm.
what the cryptocurrency often suffices for is the incentive. So the game theory aspect of it, of like, okay, so we have this token that has actual real economic value, and you have 100 of it, and by you locking in like 20 of it, you're going to get some outcome that this blockchain, some value, that whatever this value that the blockchain is outputting, you're going to get that value. So there's a trade-off. So yeah, I think like that's another component that we should, so if someone's interested in blockchain
Yeah,
game
the
theory.
challenge of turning your vision and creativity into practice, I think that's some challenge that many people would wish to have. To have the creativity and the ability to think how to turn it into practice. And with your many roles before, like kind of technical roles, and then you start up a blockchain company, I guess that you have involved getting more and more involvement in blockchain governance.
So yeah, my role previously as a co-founder at a startup,
Mm.
that opened me up in many ways, because
Mm.
prior to that, I was an application engineer, and prior to that, support engineer at Parity. So my job was very narrow, it was very specific, very technical. And then I jumped into startup world, which you have to wear multiple hats.
Mm.
And one of the things that I learned is not to be afraid to play certain roles. And one of them, you could say that I was a bit hesitant, was being a public figure, and politics, governance. I shouldn't say politics, I just say governance, right?
Mm.
You often, especially in Polkadot, you become a public figure.
Mm.
And I was always hesitant because I didn't like to be disliked by people, or critiqued by others. And so that was something that during my startup experience, I learned not to be afraid of. And so there's this opportunity right now where the decentralized voice program opened up. And so like for me, it's more just like an interest. Like, let's see, you know, if I get approved for that, I'll participate I'll have a technical voice.
Mm.
So I do think that like right now, Polkadot uh, could use some help in terms of uh, getting up to speed with the rest of the crypto world.
Mm.
Um, we have succeeded in many things, one of them being governance, and I'd love to talk about that, why we've succeeded in governance. However, I do think that we need stronger technical voices to lead Polkadot, because the strong technical voices that we've had in Polkadot, they've kind of they've kind of been stepping away, not stepping away, but like they're working on other important tasks that are needed for Polkadot. One of them is like this new protocol that's being built called Jam. So their mind share is going in that direction, whereas previously their mind share was very focused in like leading Polkadot and growing Polkadot. So we're kind of missing that right now, which you could say in one way it may be a good thing, because like you look at Bitcoin, right? Satoshi stepped away and Bitcoin thrived. And so
Mm,
like we have multiple Satoshis that have stepped away. So maybe
mm.
that's a crucial ingredient for it to thrive because the blockchain is running.
Yeah.
So it is running, it's in the cloud, it's super decentralized. So everything that gets added to it is just another layer that's like another piece of, cement and brick, cement and brick. So that in itself could be deemed as success.
Oh, okay. And in this job of governance of the platform, besides the challenge of need to speak as a public figure and have to navigate different type of relationship, is there any um a special thing like something uniquely about governance of blockchain that you have observed during your time working there?
So that would be one of the successes of Polkadot. Polkadot has an on-chain governance system that's sophisticated
Mm,
and cutting edge. And I'd love to see the same tech being used in other real world places, such as the US government. Uh,
mm,
I believe that the tech is good enough that with a good software engineering team, a good blockchain engineering team, we could create a blockchain, a sovereign blockchain, it doesn't have to be connected to Polkadot, with this governance system and add to it, improve it so that it can be used for government in a transparent manner. It's that the technology is already, it's actually that good that it can already be used for that. Right now it's used for Polkadot governance. And the governance itself is like the actual voting is on chain. The proposals are submitted on chain. Whereas there's also a lot of off-chain components. For example, like when a team submits a proposal on chain, like they want to do X, Y, and Z to help grow Polkadot. There's YouTube channel called Kusumerian.
mm.
They do these weekly calls, which are super fun. And it's open to the public. Actually, anybody can join.
Oh,
It's not like it's not on chain, right? It's an off-chain component.
mm,
There's this like transparent component where it's like you can join. It's a Google Meet. So if you want to
mm,
join, you can ask questions like, and you can debate. So there's the
mm,
debate going on. Hey, is this proposal worth it? They're asking for X amount of crypto, should we give it to them? Like, what's their credibility? Some really, really powerful, healthy conversations that are had that help the voters at the end of the day decide whether they want to A or nay that proposal on chain. So I think that when we speak about governance, it's not only the on-chain components. Yes, you do need something very like a good system, a good on-chain system, but you also need the community aspect of it.
mhm.
And I would
And
say like the biggest problem to solve for governance, it's not a blockchain problem. It's actually a problem that already existed prior to blockchain. It's like, how do you get people to vote? And it's not an easy problem. You can, like, game theory can help. I'm sure game theory can help towards it. Nobody's been able to solve it yet. Uh, so what ends up happening is like usually you get like a small subset of the community to actually vote, right? So how do you get a larger subset or everyone or majority of the community token holders to vote? Yeah.
and so is it correct to say like that voting is actually the transition from the off-chain to the on-chain governance to actually execute something?
That the voting is actually, it's on chain, right? Like you use your
Mm,
account and you say, I'm going to vote with 10 of my cryptocurrency. Uh, or if you have a lot, so I'm going to vote with 1 million of my cryptocurrency. So the voting power is stronger. Or we have something also part of the system. It's conviction voting. So it's like if you don't have a lot, maybe you have 1,000 crypto, but you're willing to lock that crypto for
mm,
7 days for stronger conviction, for stronger voting power, or for 1 month for even stronger voting power because you're really passionate about this proposal. So there's different, that's the beauty of like Web3 and blockchain that
Mm.
we're creating these new protocols, these new systems. So one being this conviction voting. The other one is like having a trail of data, on-chain data. So there's like a big like data analytics component that all this data is transparent that others can study and look at it and study. And I'm sure a wealth of knowledge can come from studying that on-chain governance data, which I think that's something relatively new. Yeah.
Mhm. And you mentioned about the Polkadot with a very good technology for the on-chain governance. What is it very unique in the space, and what contribute to its uniqueness?
So we started with when we're building like even like if you want to build a Polkadot blockchain,
Mm,
which with the substrate framework, you can build your own blockchain. You can start like the simplest form of governance
mm,
is pseudo uh,
mm,
with the substrate framework, which is essentially it's one account that has root privileges, one account that has like administrative privileges. That in itself, I'd say that's the simplest governance, right? Like that's the dictator, right? And
mm.
hopefully it's a benevolent dictator, right?
Yeah.
They're the decision making. And often it's recommended for blockchains to start in that way
Mm,
until they get everything set up correctly. Once everything's set up, they understand how the blockchain's working, how to do the upgrades and everything. Then transition from pseudo to one step, the next step. And the next step could be something as simple as a collective. So that's
mm,
another form of governance where it's like no longer is it one admin. Now it's a group
mm,
that makes decisions. So that group now is on chain, right? It's an on chain group. They're on chain, and so they get to execute the runtime upgrades on the blockchain. They get to execute things on the blockchain, and that's not bad, right? You have a group, so the community has to kind of like delegate their how do you say their voting power. Like
mm,
they don't like their voting power is essentially the collective, the group. Um, and then the next step that we have in the Polkadot world is something called democracy, where then you really the community, it goes beyond just like this select group. Now it's the community. So the community now has voting power. The community now has the power to say yes or no to a proposal, and they can vote on chain. So that's like the simplest, like that's what we call democracy. So that in
okay.
itself what was really nice. And that already exists as an on-chain system that you can use with Polkadot if you want to build a blockchain with the Polkadot framework substrate. So then that's how Polkadot started with democracy. And we learned a lot from that. There were weaknesses to that. And so that's where we iterated and we came up with governance version 2 that we called governance version 2, which is called nowadays OpenGov.
Mm,
And OpenGov, I would say, is a huge success. There's a more intricate voting mechanism. It's still similar to democracy, where it's like the community can vote. There's the conviction voting, um, and there's different, like there's the voting periods, there's thresholds. It's just a lot more sophisticated on chain. And it's what we currently have, and it's completely evolvable. So we're still iterating on it. That's the beauty of like the Polkadot, the substrate framework, that you
mm,
can upgrade your blockchain seamlessly. So any improvements that we see, we're improving the governance system and iterating. And there have been experiments as well in the past, such as like, how do we get people to vote? Let's award them NFTs. So
mm.
every time you vote, you get an NFT. So people are trying to experiment, and I'd say that's one of the beauties with like uh, crypto blockchain is that you can experiment and try things, and if it fails, sunset it. If it succeeds, then that's another layer. Like and so like it's evolving. Like people say, oh, it's not fast enough. Well, I see it from like I think I see it from the a lower level. It's evolving at an incredible pace.
Yeah. So your knowledge in the governance structure of Polkadot is really like huge, amazing. Did you have all of this knowledge when you work as just as as a developer assistant before?
So this knowledge mainly came from when I was a support engineer. And
Mm,
for example, I'd get questions from teams who wanted to build blockchains on Polkadot, and they would ask for advice on like how to implement governance. And so there were different phases in Parity where like there was a point we didn't have governance V2. So the way to build governance was through using the democracy logic, the Rust programming, the Rust module that we had for democracy. But then how do you do it? How do you implement it? How do you add these modules? How do you configure it, in your blockchain, things like that. So that's where I got a lot of that knowledge. Um, yeah,
oh, yeah. And so are you aware of the region network?
I am not.
Oh, so region network started by Gregory Landois, I guess. The network that's focusing on the finance, supporting the financial transaction for in ecological causes, basically like carbon credit transaction. Have you ever heard about that type of use case for blockchain? The carbon credit.
I've heard of it, but I'm not very
Aware of the
knowledgeable.
region network.
Yeah,
Okay.
about the carbon credit approach.
Oh, I see. You heard about that, but not specifically about region.
I don't know how the carbon credit works. Yeah, like
Oh,
yeah,
I see.
yeah.
And I understand that they build on Cosmos blockchain and Polkadot was built on Substrate. Is there any differences between this kind of framework, or they just happen to pick one to
Uh,
start with?
yeah, I can speak on Polkadot. So
Mm,
for example, when Gav had the vision of Polkadot and he published the paper,
mm,
it was a beautiful read. And it was like, okay, so we have this idea, this vision, here's a paper, let's build it now.
mm,
And they saw that the future was going to be a multi-chain world because like that's Polkadot. Polkadot, when we say Polkadot, it's essentially like a main blockchain called a relay chain, and then all these other blockchains that can connect to the relay chain. And so if the future was going to be a multi-blockchain world, then it makes sense that we need to build a framework, a blockchain framework that will allow developers, will allow teams to build blockchains quickly
oh,
because blockchain is super like the learning curve, it's like really complicated and there's a lot of places you could go wrong. And so as they were building the Polkadot blockchain, they were building this blockchain framework called Substrate.
mm,
So it's happening in parallel. In fact, Substrate was being used to build Polkadot. So I would say that Polkadot is a superset of Substrate.
okay.
So nowadays, the framework is mature. You can use Substrate to build a blockchain to connect to Polkadot, or you can use Substrate to build a blockchain that's completely independent from Polkadot, your own sovereign, so what we call solo blockchain.
Hmm. So in terms of organization, how are they related to each other? Substrate and Polkadot.
Yeah, it's all part of what we call the Polkadot SDK.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is a software development kit, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I know one term. So and that belong to one company?
Right now, the Polkadot SDK is in the Parity
Mm,
organization. And it is important to say that even like from a governance standpoint,
mm,
Polkadot itself does not belong to a company. So
mm,
uh, the actual Polkadot, what we call runtime, that is not, if you look at the GitHub, it's the runtime is not under Parity. The
mm.
runtime is under what we call the fellowship. If you at the
Okay.
GitHub repository, it's a Polkadot fellowship, and the runtime, the actual like business logic for Polkadot, the runtime, we'll call the runtime, it's under that fellowship repo, fellowship organization, and that's beautiful because this fellowship, it's an on-chain collective, it's a technical collective that they've been voted on by the community. Uh, and there are certain requirements. There's different ranks, on-chain ranks, rank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 7, and very, very difficult to get in. And it's for mainly for core engineers, Polkadot core engineers. and there's novel things being built into it. So if you become a member, like each rank has its perks. And it's the idea that you now have this on-chain engineering group that can pioneer Web3 in the form of Polkadot. So they don't belong to any company that's tied to paper, right? It's completely decentralized. And
Okay.
so this is something like a kind of a breakthrough, because if parity were to go down tomorrow, this group will continue. And one of the novel features that are being built into this, it's on chain, is a salary protocol. So the
Salary.
idea, yes, that's tied to rank. So the
Okay.
idea that based on your rank, you can get income, and you have to defend your rank. For the lower ranks, you have to defend them every period of time, and say like, these have been my accomplishments, so far, to justify that you continue to belong in that rank.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned before, oh, before I ask this question, so now come back to the company that you started, Rogue, right?
Yeah.
And the blockchain pop, was it built on Polkadot as well?
You could say, yes, it was built on Polkadot tech, and it's a blockchain that's meant to be connected to Polkadot, which we call parachain. So the reason like the word parachain came about is because I was saying like there's the Polkadot relay chain and all these blockchains that are connected to it, which we call parachains.
Okay.
And they're all working in parallel. So that's why they're called parachains.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And is it does it aim to solve the problem of interoperability in the blockchain world?
Yes, so like because these parachains are connected to Polkadot,
Mm.
they can interop with each other. They can communicate with each other in a secure manner, in a trustless manner.
Mm-hmm. And what about some other blockchain like Ethereum, Solana? Um, how does
So
Polkadot connect with
yeah,
that?
we built a trustless bridge, like we, the Polkadot community, we built a trustless bridge using cryptography and computer science.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not reliant on multi-sigs. It's completely trustless, built on mathematics, where you can communicate, Polkadot can communicate with Ethereum, and Ethereum can communicate with Polkadot. That's live, that's happening. You can transact right now. And it's not only about transacting cryptocurrency across this bridge, it's called Snowbridge. It's
Mm.
also about communication.
Okay.
So communication to me is currency.
Mm.
So it's about communicating state. So communicating state of blockchain A with state of blockchain B, whether that state has cryptocurrency in it or whether that state has something else in it, doesn't matter.
So by this communication as a state, is it more a technical um, mm, sense of communication, right? It's quite different from we're thinking of human communication.
Yeah, like so I get a lot of like, especially from the American crypto space or Web3 space. I mean, some of them are still being sold on the whole Web3 concept. Uh, I get a lot of like DeFi, like
Mm.
focus still is on DeFi, when in fact, like Polkadot, it's like there's so much more than just DeFi.
Mm.
And so like this, when I speak about state, it's like verifying that something happened on blockchain A, creating a proof for that, and then in blockchain B saying, hey, here's the proof that it happened in blockchain A, and then doing the next set of instructions based on that proof.
Oh, okay. And talking about this sophisticated governance system, how does it address the question of accountability?
Yeah, that's a great question. Accountability, I mean, there's so many aspects of accountability.
Mm.
Um, a lot of it is still off chain, I'd say, like teams who have been awarded crypto to fund their projects. Um, you know, they're accountable to the community, which is
Mm.
beautiful. Like I think that's beautiful. Like I've always been kind of hesitant to like build a blockchain project that's backed by VC or angel investor or something. Like I really believe in like, let's have it backed by the treasury, the Polkadot treasury,
Mm.
get governance and purely by that, and be accountable to the community because it's built in such a transparent on-chain manner, right? So let's ride that. Let's go more and more with that. Whereas there's so many crypto projects that it's a bit of a blend of both, where you got invisible hands behind the scenes. So is that according to the true Web3 philosophy, right? I don't know. That's a good discussion. But like, say the team gets awarded the funds to build a project, and they say they commit to like, okay, 1 year, and then 1 year goes by. Have they successfully completed the project? Because they come back usually for like another proposal, asking for more money. Right now, a lot of that accountability, it is, I'd say it's working, but a lot of that is like off chain. It's like the community, the Polkadot community is very loud, and that was one of the reasons in the past I'd stay away. They will take you apart. Like there's some with really strong, you get all sorts of strong opinions, and they will say whatever. There's no filter. They will say, hey, we gave
Okay.
you X amount of money last year, what you did nothing with it,
Oh.
like, why do you think you need to get that now? But like, keep in mind that's off chain, but obviously it does have an impact. Like if the voters who are watching that Kusumerian, you can see how like that Kusumerian, something like that is so essential, such a key ingredient, because it's informing the people, the community. And then the people will say, well, I didn't know about that. Like that wasn't like, or they'll say, is that true? They'll research it themselves, right? And they'll say, oh, I'm definitely voting a nay for this. I thought, because sometimes the proposal is written in a very beautiful way, right? Very articulated, infograph, all this stuff, but it's nonsense, right? Like this team, they completely like ran away with the money last year, like, right? So yeah, I'd say accountability is happening like that right now. Yeah,
So does the pseudonymity or the anonymity of the blockchain, does it make accountability harder, more challenging to achieve?
there's yeah, there's like, you could submit a proposal under an account ID that doesn't have an identification,
Mm.
but there's trade-offs to that. A lot of them that are being submitted have gone through on-chain identification where you can associate a name with an ID, with an account. And that's also, it's interesting to see that progress and evolve. Like I used to see a lot of blockchain projects where you go to their website and if it was like a blockchain project, you have no idea who the team is. There's
Mm.
no photos of the founders, nothing. And I don't like that. Now you're starting to see, now that the governance systems are maturing a little bit more, people are creating proposals on chain with like, this is the XYZ DAO, or this is the XYZ team. And so there's like the off-chain community, like this YouTube thing that they have every week, this governance review. The teams that have created proposals, they are incentivized to get on that show and talk about their proposal. Like, where's that incentive coming from? That's something to think about, because it's completely optional. You don't have to, but if you don't, then you risk that your proposal might be miscommunicated or unclear. Community will have questions. There's nobody to answer. There will be assumptions. Things like that will happen. So it's in your best interest that you show up to this off-chain thing and answer the community questions. Come prepared. Maybe even bring a slide deck. So stuff like that is happening. Is formalized. It's formalizing a little bit. I'd say like that's good and bad. Like it's good because like you get a lot less of the shady stuff happening. But we want to make sure that there's still like creativity, that this doesn't become like too formal where it's like the small grassroots kind of engineers and small teams can't get in there because it's overtaken by larger teams who have succeeded in the past.
Okay, so that's interesting to know. Now, like as a technology that's aimed to trustlessly connect people that don't necessarily trust each other, actually have a strong off-chain governance. that people show up and present themselves and present the idea, so the community will evaluate that.
Yeah, there's trade-offs to it. We have to really be careful, because then we start seeing that some part of the governance starts becoming centralized, like this community who's showing up, like some of them that consistently show up to this weekly call, they're becoming notable figures, right? So their view starts to become have like a big role in Polkadot,
Yeah.
right? And we got to be like, that's something to think about. The other thing that I've seen as like challenges, especially from my area, from the engineering aspect, is that if you're a software engineer, you're starting out with Web3, you learn the skills, and you have a good idea, and you need to get funding. You want to get funding for it. It can be the entry, like the barrier to entry into this, especially Polkadot governance, it can be frightening. Like if I have a really good idea that's backed by cryptography, mathematics, and computer science, and I want to get like $30,000 to test it out, there, if I, it's frightening might be frightening to go up in front of a panel and get your idea ripped apart, right? Not everybody wants to sign up for Shark Tank, for Polkadot Shark Tank, you know?
Yeah.
So there has to be a mechanism for engineers that have a good idea, that want to get a little bit of funding. And there have been some initiatives in Polkadot, like for example, there's these smaller grant systems, like there's one called Open Source Grant, where it was a team of Polkadot people, a small team, I don't know, like maybe 5 people, who apply to the treasury. They're like, okay, we want to create this grant, this grant system, like give us a bounty, give us some crypto. And the idea is that we will, engineers will apply with ideas, and we can award them up to 30K to fund their project, right? So there are these smaller movements, but then you're accountable to these 5 people, right? Their opinions. So just recently, one of them got denied, and it was a legit technical thing that they wanted to build. So under what grounds they got denied, I could say it was a bit of an opinion, but the team is how do you say, they do have the right to have an opinion, so, which is fine. But on the other hand, I could see the counter argument to like, no, we should fund this project. So unfortunately, also, like, I see that missing. I see like there needs to be, in my opinion, like this whole decentralized thing. Like when we talk about decentralized system that we're building, like Polkadot, it's not that everything is decentralized. Key things need to be decentralized, right? So like the computers that are sustaining the network, yes, they need to be decentralized. But certain things don't need to be decentralized. I do believe that there needs to be strong leaders that need to like do various tasks, such as matchmaking. Like there's a lot of really strong engineers with these really great ideas, but they suck at product. They suck at marketing. So there needs to be a system, a group, either one person or a group of people who are highly skilled at building successful products that can serve as matchmaking and say, hey, you got a good idea, but you're missing a product manager, you're missing product marketing, and you're missing like a CEO, and let's put this all together, and it's part of this incubator type of thing, and we're going to give you 30K to test it out, right? And then there will be milestones from that point on. Because right now we just kind of got this chaos happening where it's like, let's fund this project, and it's just like 3 engineers goes, they built like this ridiculous like infrastructure because they got a lot of money, but no marketing, no branding, no product. So it's like a ghost town. So things like that. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, and what about when you talk about data structure? How do Polkadot or the blockchain community in general deal with some requirements for data regulation, for example, like the general data regulation from the European, the GDPR. Are you aware of that?
A bit.
Yeah. Is there in consideration of building this blockchain, how to comply with them at all?
So yes, 2 days ago, I wrote a post on the Polkadot forum, and I used a sentence that it's been like in my head, and I said blockchain has nothing to do with governments. And it's a statement that requires a lot of unpacking, because obviously like blockchain can be a super useful tool for governments. And I actually said, earlier actually about like the governance system for the US government, things like that. What I meant by that statement is that the type of blockchain that we're building with Polkadot, which is a different category of blockchain. And the way that I like to see it going is that it's an independent, how do you say, like vacuum. It's essentially like a vacuum. It's a vacuum to experiment with Web3 concepts. And government regulation should have no jurisdiction on that environment, in that vacuum, in that environment. It should have zero jurisdiction. So a blockchain that has government having jurisdiction on that is not this type of blockchain that I'm talking about. So the only jurisdiction that it can have, the only way it can have it is if it builds an on-chain protocol. So if a government wants to have regulation, build a protocol, no problem, play under the rules of Web3. Otherwise, the only place it can have jurisdiction is outside of that environment. So starting with the off-ramp and ending with the on-ramp. So because what we're building here, at least what we're trying to build, and I hope it does build, because it's gonna propel the digital age to the next level. It's these sovereign systems that are sovereign, and it's the advent of the digital world. You could say that the digital world started a long time ago. It started with the telegraph. Why did it start with the telegraph? Because it was the telegraph where you go from Europe to the United States, right? That was the start of the digital world. So like 1,000 years from now, when people look back at this age, they're going to call it, maybe, there was the Renaissance age, blah, blah, blah. Maybe they'll say like this was the digital age. So the telegraph was the first one because it was the first time that you could have communication without the middle person. So that's essentially what we're doing with blockchain, right? Like we're software communicating with software, and we're removing the middle person through cryptography, where it's trustless manner, right? You don't have to trust on an individual. You don't have to, like, we'd say like, what's Web3 bringing about? It's like, okay, so it's the completion of the internet. The internet, Web2, it's incomplete. So you got, you think of it like Chase Bank, JP Morgan Chase, right? Like, it's my bank. It's like, okay, so is this bank completely on the internet? Well, you can go to chase.com. It's got a web page. But the reality is that the actual bank, the full protocol of the bank, decision-making, government, everything, right? It's not on the internet. It's actually, a lot of it is behind closed doors. And you, as a customer, have to trust their decision-making. And, that's what Web3 has come to finish the task, to make it so that with cryptography, mathematics, computer science, game theory, you can build a bank fully on the internet, including the decision-making, governance, right? So that goes back to like trustless aspect. Cryptography allows for that. Game theory and computer science allows for that, right? And the telegraph was the first case where you can remove the middle person and communicate. I'd say like that's like the first instance, and then from there we started evolving, and here we are to the Web3, the blockchain, using blockchain and other Web3 components. That it's not, blockchain is only one component of Web3. So yeah, I think that kind of lost my train of thought. Oh, blockchain, it has nothing to do with governments. So regulation. So the beauty of it is that I could see a day where we're creating something so disruptive with Web3. It's not only blockchain, blockchain is one component, so disruptive that it's going to change countries' borders. It's going to change governments because we're going to be able to create more efficient governments, better governments. It's going to change people's everyday lives because we're going to have better dynamics, more efficient processes. And I could see us creating the digital world in the form of superimposed nation states, sovereign nation states. So what I mean by that, like Bitcoin was the first proof that we could do something like that. Like if you think like Bitcoin was the first true cryptocurrency. Like since the 80s, 1980s, they were trying to build a digital currency, a true digital currency, a cryptocurrency. And they failed many, many times, right? That's why like Bitcoin was like the first one that actually like was able to do that because of that, you can build like everything else because you need economic incentive, right? The game theory aspect. That's why you can now do all these other things. Whereas before, if you were to build a digital currency, but a central company owned that currency, had a decision making around that currency, they could rug pull you, right? They could change or like do whatever they want with that. So it wasn't truly a cryptocurrency. So because Bitcoin, the advent of Bitcoin, people started doing really not messed up, but crazy things, right? Like if you never heard about Bitcoin at the time, and all of a sudden, like you walk into this huge warehouse where like it looks like the Matrix, where all these like CPUs, like thousands of CPUs running, and you're like, what the heck is this? Like this is crazy. Like, what are you doing? You know? And oh, it's like that's to sustain the Bitcoin network, right? So all of a sudden there was economic reason for people to build these weird factories of CPUs. So it's the first time where it's like software was actually getting people to do weird stuff, right? And that's what Gav saw, and that's what started selling me on the whole Polkadot thing, which is like Gav saw that some of the Ethereum co-founders may have seen this, and they're like, let's take this to the next level because Bitcoin is essentially a simple calculator. It does have a basic scripting language, but it's essentially a simple calculator, right? Subtract one from one account and add one to another account, right? And so it's a program. A calculator is a program, right? Computer science. So they said like, okay, what if we could create a system that could create other like programs, right? Like you think of like the cell phone, when the cell phone first was created, you can just use a cell phone to just call somebody. And then they're like, iPhone came out, or BlackBerry, I think was first, with like the idea of like apps, right? So multiple programs, aka smart contracts, right? So Ethereum was like, okay, if, what if we could have these other programs in the form of like, what were they called? Smart contracts, we could get people, to do other things, right? Because of it, cryptocurrency, economic incentive. And so, we went down that rabbit hole. And Polkadot also, that took it to a step further. So like what we're building here is something very, very powerful that we could literally say, hey, like in this room, for example, like if we have like in this space, we could take a space and we can say, the area of the space, we could give it longitude and latitude, like literally map it out on Google Maps and say, we're going to create a token, a cryptocurrency, and we're going to create an X amount of this cryptocurrency, and we're going to trade it on a decentralized exchange so it has real value, right? And we're going to disperse this token among a group of people, a sample group of people. And that token is going to be tied to that geographic area. Maybe it's a very small area, the size of a house. And maybe it isn't a house, right? And all of a sudden that token, maybe you get 500 of that token and I get 500 of that token, and one token is now worth $1,000. So it's got like a lot of value, right? Or maybe $10,000 a token. It's got a lot of value. And because of that, you can now institute rules on that space, for example. You could. right, as an experiment. And you could say, okay, if you don't wear a hat in that space, you're going to get fined one of that token every day. So all of a sudden, everybody who's a token holder is wearing hats, right? Unless they want their, thousands of dollars, taken away from them. So all of a sudden you got people wearing hats. So that's the type of protocol that we're building. It's a very, a knife in the hand of a surgeon can save lives. That knife in the hand of somebody else can do the opposite, right? So that we're building a protocol like that, where all of a sudden you take that a step further, you throw some governance in there, you throw a DAO, right? A governance. You can create a new country. You could create a digital currency, digital country that is superimposed on a physical world. So it's independent of the actual countries that exist now. You can literally right now, if you want to create the system, you could program it where you can create these superimposed countries, superimposed nation states with their own rules and regulations, where people are actually will do things because there's economic incentive behind it. And it's a better, more evolved country than the current countries that exist in the world, and has its own set of on-chain regulations. That's what I'm talking about. That's the type of blockchain that we're talking about. That when I say governments have nothing to do with blockchain, governments that are off-chain, right? Because it'll have its more efficient government that's way blazing fast, super iterative, and more in favor of the people's needs, so that at the end of the day, people can live better lives among their peers. Because that's, I hope that what we're trying to get to, right?
Wow, that's fascinating. Hey, this is the top of the hour, so I will stop the recording now. Thank you so much for your time.